Welcome to this week's episode of the Talent Talks podcast, where this week my guest is Darren Bosman, a procurement leader who has built and scaled functions across industries and regions from South Africa and the Seychelles to the UK. He's now Head of Procurement at the fintech unicorn Tide, where he's helping the business scale through robust systems, enhanced commercial excellence, and a partnership-led approach to procurement. So without further ado, let's get on with today's show. Darren, welcome to the Talent Talks podcast. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
So I guess I wanted to kick things off for you. You've recently started your new role. So I guess in first impressions, what are you seeing as some of the obstacles, or what have been some of the obstacles in setting up a procurement sort of function from scratch, and how have you managed to overcome those?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, I guess. The first thing is it's never really from scratch.
Yeah.
You especially in the type of organization that I've been going into, the fintechs of the world, the professional services type organizations, procurement's coming in somewhere in the middle of the business, let's say. And you've had people doing purchasing procurement in some way, shape or form. They've probably started in a startup type world where they've been speaking to somebody like the CFO or the financial director a lot, and they've been really close knit together, and they've been speaking about what purchases they need to do. And then as the business has grown up, that's started to become a bit more difficult. So I guess, the first thing is to see how decentralized things have ended up at. So where is the data sitting? I think that's always a big challenge when it comes to just coming into a business. Is everything's so decentralized from the data perspective, and it's structured in completely different ways. So that is number one. And then that is somewhat tied in with the other thing of overcoming people believing that procurement is a policing function. Naturally, procurement has that sort of reputation, and hopefully you've started your role and you've very aligned from the interview process of what the objectives are going to be. But policing is not where we want to be. And coming into the business and working with those stakeholders to share what it is that you're trying to achieve. Hopefully, what you're coming in to do is aligned with what the business is trying to do, and therefore we are able to align what we're doing and overcome some of that initial stakeholder fear from what that organization is trying to do.
And I'm guessing when you're joining a business, there'll presumably be people that will have different impressions of procurement. Some people will see it as a real value add. Some people will, like you said, have a negative connotation about it being the cost police. So how do you overcome that? Do you do a universal one-size-fits-all, this is what we're doing, or is it dependent on who you're talking to in the business, or how do you sort of address that? Because there'll be skepticism, there'll be positive and there'll be negative depending on where you are. Yeah,
absolutely. We were just talking beforehand how in my current org, everyone's generally very excited to have me, and they're really wanting procurement to get involved. Definitely not always the case. So, that one-size-fits-all is definitely not going to work. I think understanding what it is people are trying to achieve, number one, across the org, it's always different. And then customizing your approach. In one of my previous orgs, there was a specific facilities department that was core to what the business did, but they were viewed they viewed themselves as a bit of a second-class citizen for a number of reasons. Decisions were always often passed down to them. Often actually, their office was located in a different part of the building to the rest of the org. So, they had this bit of chip on their shoulder and definitely had to come up with a custom solution for them. And what I actually did was move down to their office for a few weeks when I first started. And it actually worked out very well from that perspective. It built a bit of trust and rapport. It also meant that I was able to understand what they were doing in their day-to-day jobs. And I managed to see what was going on from the supplier relationships and how they were dealing with that. And actually, at the end of my time, when I was sitting down there with them, I set up a cadence to continue doing that. But we also discussed what their views were. And at the end of that, they were much more open. And actually, they addressed lots of the challenges that I wanted to do anyway. So that was just from a trust perspective. And I think that carries through across all of the people that you're working with is how do you get on side with them and try to listen more than talk.
That's a great example of actually literally physically sitting on site with them and being very open with them and what you're doing and trying to immerse yourself. Yeah. Okay.
In today's world, I mean, we all have laptops that we take home when we work from home, or
Yeah.
some version of that. So there's very little excuse to not do that in some way, shape, or form, or jump on a Teams call or sit with them across with what they're doing.
You've also worked in both centralized and decentralized models. What are the key indicators when an organization is ready to move from a decentralized to a center-led procurement function and approach?
Yeah, for sure. Fortunately, in most of the organizations that I'm working in now, and we're not going full centralized. And I think that's, we're not manufacturing organizations or things where procurement is super important. Moving from the decentralized to the center-led is kind of what we already discussed in some way, where you're coming into an org and the business has grown to an extent where they need that. So, what are the indicators? Duplicated suppliers. It's a really good indicator of that. Different teams are solving for the same problem often, and there's no one with a bird's eye view of what's happening, or if there is somebody that's doing it, it's typically finance. It's too late to get involved. So yeah, solving the same problems. You're starting to see duplicate suppliers coming through, and then that's leading to a higher level of risk. And that's also driven by the fact that teams who are meant to be generating revenue, implementing new systems, whatever the case may be, they are focusing on procurement, and therefore productivity is maybe not as high as it could be. So I think all of those factors are things that you'll start to see.
Yeah. And is it, because sometimes people sort of say that, going to a centralized model is always where business would aspire to go to. Do you agree with that? Do you disagree with that? Is it dependent on the business's maturity and needs, or how do you determine, I guess, is it a one-size-fits-all approach?
As we said, if you're a manufacturing org, procurement probably should be some centralized, or some version of that's very close to that side of things. Whereas in the average business, you're going to find that you want your end users to be the experts in what they need.
Right. Okay.
So you want to encourage them to be proactive and thinking about what it is that they want to achieve. And then you want the procurement team to be not policing, but adding a level of governance, due diligence, and pulling in those things in the elements of what they want in a more proactive way. And I think that's where the decentralized versus center-led approach kind of melds together, and where you start moving from one to the other. The decentralized model, as we said, has its challenges. You start to see duplicate of cost, increased focus on things that people shouldn't be working on, higher risk, and that's where procurement can come and help bring that to a steady state.
And when you're implementing these changes in the businesses, and obviously you'll be doing this at the moment at Tide and working through that with your stakeholders, there'll be a level of resistance, as we sort of spoke about earlier on. But how do you find that balance in addressing resistance while maintaining good supplier relations with your, in the business?
Yeah, good question.
It's not easy, I guess, is the short answer.
No, it's exactly not. I think overarchingly, why are people resistant to change? Or some say it's probably because they've been through changes in the past and it hasn't worked. So that's one factor. They might not believe in what it is that you're doing. So then that's often something that we see from a procurement perspective of why are we making this change? It's a cost saving exercise, whatever the case is. So we want to go in, and it means you probably haven't taken your stakeholders along the journey with you of why it is that you're trying to make some change. So that why is super important. Is that from a cost perspective? Is it from improving the value from your suppliers? Is it improving performance? And again, that's going to be closely linked to what the business is hopefully trying to achieve. It's an interesting challenge that we would try and solve for across the board. You had another question in there somewhere, I think.
And then I guess, is it while balancing sort of maintaining supplier relations, keeping positive suppliers on board and engaged, whether that's internal or your external suppliers you're working with. So how do you keep them energized, keep them engaged, keep them on side, I guess, when you're looking to make changes? Because I guess suppliers will be nervous. There's a new head of procurement, a new procurement director that's just joined. They'll have their own suppliers they know. They'll have their own sort of policies and procedures they want to be embedding. So how do you keep the suppliers, I guess, engaged and energized with what you're doing?
Yeah, great. I think number one, listening to your stakeholders when you're coming into a business at the start is super important. Who's really important to how the business operates and is, should not be the focus of change. Where are there things that aren't working so well? And maybe in that second bracket, where are there quick wins that you can help people solve challenges and bring them along? But from the supplier relationship perspective, I think often I don't think that people have that strong relationships with suppliers. They're more afraid of the change. What is the impact of that gonna have on me? So they've maybe worked with a supplier for a long period of time, but that's not really a strong business relationship from that perspective. It's this is how we've always done it, and let's just continue on because we don't want to have to deal with the additional resource that's required in that, or again, they don't believe what it is that you're trying to achieve. Trust is massively important from your stakeholder side, and then on the supplier relationship management, engaging with people and that's on the supplier side, explaining it at what it is that you're trying to do. It's I don't think anyone's going to be upset if you go to them and tell them, hey, we do need to reduce cost because of XYZ reason. Supplier's going to listen and understand and explain what their value is most likely. And then you'll meet somewhere in the middle if that is your focus. But hopefully your focus is value. And then you can explain what it is. And they will hopefully work in a partnership approach with you. If they don't, they come back and they get frustrated. It's probably not the right partner to be working with. I've had that as well in a business where I was working before, where we went to the supplier and said, we need you to break down your services into different elements because the whole package that you've offered us is no longer fit for purpose. And they came back and told us that it's a take it or leave it. If you want to segment it, we don't think that you're the right partner for us. Fair enough.
You're not the right partner.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's something that you can be aware of.
It's sometimes hard, isn't it, I guess, for looking from a procurement perspective, particularly with suppliers that they're known entities to you, maybe they're known entities to the business. But I guess sometimes it's about making brave decisions sometimes and actually walking away if it's not culturally aligned, because you're only going to have a problem down the line. Using that example, if you were to say yes to them and actually just, you knew in your heart of hearts it's probably not the right person to work with. But if you said yes, something else would probably be a bigger issue down the line as you look to try and embed with them. So, definitely.
Absolutely. Bringing your own suppliers can be really helpful. If they're solving the challenge that everyone else is trying to solve.
The Talent Talks podcast is delighted to be sponsored by Omnia. Omnia is an AI native intake and orchestration platform that lets procurement teams focus on strategy and not systems. It creates a single front door for requests, orchestrates integrated processes across sourcing, approvals, and third-party risk management, is a source of truth for supplier data, and connects every corner of the procurement tech stack with no-code, drag-and-drop workflows. Omnia is trusted with procurement teams such as Spotify, MongoDB, and Synthesia to deliver an amazing experience, time and cost savings, and efficiency. Now let's get back to today's episode of the Talent Talks podcast. Talking about you've worked in a real range of industry sectors and countries as well, as we talked about in the intro, South African market, Seychelles, UK. Would you say the skill sets are very transferable from industry and indeed from different continents? Or, how have you seen it in your career?
Definitely skills are transferable across industries, geographies, whatever it is, and within procurement. I mean, all you have to do is go on the SIPS website and they don't say procurement for financial services or procurement for professional services or whatever it is. Naturally, there's different elements of each of those roles. Like in manufacturing, you need to be very strong on product management and purchase orders and all these other elements of things. But it's no different to working within a company and having different geographical requirements. Especially we're lucky in London that so many businesses here do have that global feel, and those are transferable. You wouldn't even question it. I don't think. You might have experts in those fields, but that's the way I like to look at it. And I think when you talk about procurement I think is a very logical thing. It's something that actually we do in our lives every day. I was
You
explaining.
don't realize we're doing it. They're doing it sometimes. Yeah.
I said I used this exact example the other day where I said, okay, if you were gonna need a new mobile service, you're getting a new phone, you get a new package, what would you do? Oh, well, I'd probably like go and have a look on the comparative websites and have a look and see what my options are. I'd probably figure out what how many gigabytes of data I need, and then I'd look in that range and pick one from that website, or I'd go and look it up. Once I've picked one, I would then go and actually ask for a quote and probably get a payment link, make that payment. Maybe I would look through some of the key terms and conditions. Probably not, let's be honest, we don't do that on our daily lives, but you should read some of the key ones anyway. And then during the course of your contract, once you've received your phone and you've done your implementation, you then may probably add a bolt-on when you go to Europe, or you need more data, or whatever the case is. And then you come up to your renewal cycle, and you then probably do another benchmarking exercise, or you say like, oh, well, I can't be bothered because I've got other priorities in my lives. You pretty much just explained like the procurement cycle in some way, shape, or form. So I think it's very logical, and I often tell people like, whenever they're doing procurement, just slow down. Everyone gets super stressed because it involves money and legal and all these other areas. But if you just stop and ask, what do we actually need and how are we going to get there? It's pretty logical.
Yeah. I think that's been a running theme for the podcast this year around people sort of always talking about that cutting for the noise, because I think sometimes procurement can overcomplicate itself. And maybe that's through different use of language. One business would call someone a strategic sourcing manager, someone else would call it a procurement manager, purchasing manager, vendor manager. It has a lot of names for it. And sometimes almost I think the profession can kind of always confuse itself. So I think that's a really good example of actually just simplifying it. And the mobile analogy is exactly that. We are procuring in our everyday lives, aren't we? And sometimes we don't even know we're sort of doing it. So yeah, I think that's great advice.
Yeah, and I think just expanding on that one as well, you can see, especially in the procurement leader world, and you know probably better than most coming from Talent Drive, is what skills are you hiring, especially from a leadership perspective? The core skills of procurement are highly transferable. So you're looking for who's got great communication, who's got stakeholder management, the other areas of that sort of thing.
Yeah, could agree more. And that's part of the almost the filtering process for us when we're identifying, good customers, good clients, good people to work with. So in terms of your, you're very experienced with procurement. You've been in it a while now. You've obviously taken some great successes, some good learns on the way, I imagine, as well. What would you say the best sort of learn that you've had in your career to date? And maybe the best bit of advice, maybe there's a piece of advice that you've been given that you would reflect on and think was good?
Yeah, I think having stakeholder buy-in and trust is probably the number one more focus over having a perfect procurement process. So actually getting people to engage is and having a great user experience for those people is something that I would encourage any procurement person to do, whether it's raising purchase orders or running an intake process through an Omnia-like system. These things that are really important to your stakeholders, and that's going to get you on the right path towards something. So in some ways, it's like action rather than inaction. I've heard a couple of interesting analogies. Like my dad always says to me, if something's 80% right, go ahead and do it. Start the wheels turning. And the other day at the Christmas party for Tide, we were talking to the CEO, and he said, "Yeah, that's great, but just maybe also think about the two-door analogy of if you can only walk through one door and you can't come back, you need to pay more due diligence to it. If you've got the way to come back through the second door, then absolutely, like, move fast and ship things fast. And this is how engineering teams are working these days, and it's no different to the procurement function. So that's probably lessons and advice.
A bit of advice
in across the board. But yeah, I think especially when in the world of today, where intake is so important, and you want your users to be having the best experience.
Yeah. Because that attracts them and it retains them, doesn't it? It allows that to be more resilient in your customer base. You can't just sort of crowbar them into one way and go through that door, as you say. If Can't go back the other way. So I'm going to use that analogy, that two-door approach from your CEO. I like that. So AI and technology, again, hot topic. It's been there a while, and obviously it's being used a lot across most businesses. I know you're an early adopter yourself personally. So how do you see AI and technology reshaping the role of procurement over the next few years, and what will remain sort of distinctly human and what won't?
Yeah, I think largely the admin part of the role can and should be taken over by to a large degree by AI. I wish I'd had that early on in my career. Where we were doing a lot of purchase orders and supplier invoices, and we had to ship a container every Friday, and we had to prepare packing lists, and it was a mad rush. And you think now how quickly that could have just been done by the teams. But expanding on that, I think within the intake world, that these tools that are AI native, like Omnia is busy developing, versus is so important to driving efficiency within that. And then that ties on so many different elements that you can bring data through. So risk management, these are tasks that are super time consuming that AI now can be trained to do really effectively and quickly. So those are some of the areas, especially on the admin front, that we can do. And then it's never going to replace large elements of the human requirement. We still need people to take a bird's eye view of the business and understand what we're trying to achieve, and then feed that into the teams, and to design processes that are really effective. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting time. But like I say, we're so lucky in procurement to have these AI native tools versus we're doing an implementation for a large ERP, and during the sales process they talked about all the AI tools that they had, and after 2 years of using it, we'd never seen any of it. And it was partially because they either didn't exist and they'd been promised and didn't make it onto the roadmap, or nobody knew how to implement them, and it was a convoluted process. So now these tools are shipping AI functionality, whether it's small summaries to prepare to send to your CFO, or if they're actually doing tasks in the back end, those are just being fed into the processes so simply within the new paradigm shift of AI, of procurement tech that's coming through.
And I think also, there's always this nervousness around it. Is procurement going to be replaced? Are people going to be replaced? But from what I've certainly seen, it'd be good to get your views on it, is actually elevating the profession. It's allowing procurement to be more strategic and actually getting involved in those more strategic elements, and more, driving revenue and innovation and all that really great stuff that's going to impact the bottom line. Whereas, the transactional stuff and the more junior tactical stuff, as you say, is going to hopefully be automated and using AI and technology to support. Yeah. And be an enabler rather than be restricting people's job and scope. So I think it's just trying to push that narrative out to the market a little bit more. So
the challenge is probably if you're a junior person coming through.
For sure.
How do you get? Those repetitions are so important when you're learning your craft, whatever it might be. If you take away those reps of, first of all, how do you get into the business, and then how do you replicate those repetitions, is going to be a challenge for procurement leaders, but also the young people coming in.
And in terms of sort of procurement and the skill set, we talked about AI and the adoption of it and technology. What do you look for in talent? How do you sort of define talent when you're looking to hire and work with people?
It's the first thing is we've probably been there in the past. We know where you've had you've gone into a role that didn't work, or the ones that you've gone into, they did work. Why? So, taking that deep thinking time and going and asking that question. And also, I think understanding what it is that your team actually needs. It's the most challenging thing in the world. It's really easy to write a category manager role, but like every business is different and every department will need different things. So, I think the hard skills for me, as we discussed already, are logical or can be taught relatively easily, and those can be built over time. But the soft skills are really, really critical. Who's got great communication? Who's got humility? These are the things that you look for within a role.
And looking forward to the future of procurement, we know AI is here to stay. We know technology is clearly here to stay. Where do you see procurement sort of evolving? Are you pretty optimistic and hopeful of the profession and how it will grow? Or good to get your thoughts on what you think the years to come looks like for procurement.
Massively optimistic. The last 5 to 10 years have been huge in terms of what's happening in the procurement space from a technology perspective. People say it's the last department to receive lots of the tech that's so badly needed, and that's also helping drive up the value of the profession, because the leaders that work in organizations are starting to see that there's value, not just cost minimization, shall we say. So yeah, really, really hopeful, and I think you'll also see, similar to Tide specifically, where I'm at now, that organizations are building new functions within procurement. They're not taking people from finance and converting them into those sort of people, which I think was the organization of maybe 10, 20, 30 years ago, where most of the procurement people were accountants or finance people, or whatever the case may be. So I think there's a real opportunity for people that are in the procurement function to have a great career, to take the skills that they've learned in other roles and then bring those into startups, scale-ups, that sort of organization.
Yeah. No, brilliant. Well, look, it sounds like exciting times ahead for you, for 2026 and for Tide. Just in terms of the future for the team and procurement and what it looks like at the moment, any sort of final sort of snippets of what you've been up to, what you can obviously share on the pod of the plans for you for 2026? What's the priorities, I guess, for your procurement team at the moment and what you're looking to do?
Some of what we've already talked about, I guess, I don't want to do the whole consulting, like people, processes, and systems.
Yeah, that's important.
But definitely growing the team so that we can scale up. I think building champions within the business is something as well that is super important to take pressure off ourselves, and also develop buy-in from across the business. And then, we're busy implementing Omnia, which is the second time I've implemented Omnia and the third time I've implemented one of these intake solutions. So that's going to help define the processes that we also have within the organization, and really move us from this decentralized to center-led approach, where we will be able to have visibility on lots of our spend, and from a procurement perspective, that spend under management is something that's highly valuable. But I think just also networking as much as possible. Going to a supplier event tonight. Already had a few people reach out and say, hope you're going to be there. We've got a great community of procurement people in London, and it seems to be again growing into something that was maybe a very tactical and quite boring into like fun and insightful, and connecting with people within my industry has been something that I've taken a lot of joy in recently.
Yeah. Well, it can be quite a lonely place, can't it? That leading procurement functions like you have, because actually you only know what you know, and actually it's so good to be listening to other people, their successes and their failures and their learns on the way. I think it's really valuable to do that. I think in recruitment, people are still quite sort of can't always disclose anything. I'm a bit more of an open book, but I think it's good, and I've definitely seen a step change for procurement peers of yours actually going to these things and sharing knowledge. I think it's really impactful, and I think it's a force for good. So yeah, I'm glad to hear you're out there networking. Can be quite tiresome though, going out quite a lot and meeting lots of different people. But
we expected at this time of year around Christmas,
exactly.
But I was speaking to somebody the other day that said they were going to like 4 events a quarter, and I think that's probably too much for me.
Yeah, but it's good to get out there. Well, look, sounds like you've got a super busy year ahead for 2026. So look, thank you for joining me. Thank you for sharing more about your story, and good luck with everything, and have a restful Christmas break as well.
Thanks.
Thanks, Darren. Cheers. A big thanks again to our sponsor, Omnia. If you want to check out more about Omnia, please go to their website, www.omnia, that's omnea.co. Many thanks, and look out for the next episode coming to you soon.